The screech of tires tore through the city. A woman stumbled at the curb, trapped as a truck thundered toward her. Strangers froze, but one man moved. Daniel Harris, a single father racing to a job interview, dropped everything to pull her to safety. He didn't know it yet, but pulling a stranger from the path of a truck would set off a chain of events that would shatter his routine and rewrite his future. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The city never stopped for anyone. Horns blared, sirens wailed, footsteps pounded the sidewalks. But on this September morning, the chaos froze around one man, Daniel Harris. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. Just a 36-year-old single father in a wrinkled shirt, sprinting to a job interview that could change his daughter's future. One good break, that's all he needed. Then came the scream. At the curb, a woman's heel snagged in a grate. She twisted, panicked, tugging desperately as a truck barreled toward her, horn blasting, tires shrieking smoke. People gasped. Some raised their phones. Not one person moved. Except Daniel. His briefcase hit the ground, papers scattering like a storm. He lunged forward, arms locking around her just as the truck roared past, wind slamming against them, missing by inches. They collapsed onto the sidewalk, her breath shuddering against his chest. For a heartbeat, silence. Then whispers rippled through the crowd, "He saved her life." The woman looked up, eyes wide, voice trembling. You just saved me. I don't even know your name." Daniel steadied her, already gathering his papers. "Doesn't matter. Just be careful next time." She clutched his sleeve, her voice breaking. "Wait, thank you. Truly." He gave the faintest nod, checked his watch, and his chest sank. The interview was already gone. That night, in their tiny apartment, Emma hugged him tight. He whispered, "I failed today." She shook her head, smiling softly. Being good matters more than being important. And with that, their story truly began. The next morning, the city buzzed as usual, but somewhere in a high-rise office, one woman couldn't shake the image of a stranger pulling her from death. Her name was Victoria Lane. CEO. Ruthless. The kind of executive who could ruin a career with a single email. Yet today, her hands trembled when she touched her coffee. She replayed the moment again and again, his arms yanking her free, the sound of the truck's horn fading into silence. Her assistant interrupted with a tablet. "Board meeting in 5, Ms. Lane." Victoria's gaze narrowed. "Find him." The assistant blinked. "Who?" "The man who saved me." Her voice was sharp, unshakable now. "I want his name, his address, everything." Across town, Daniel walked Emma to school, exhaustion clinging to his face. He had blown his one chance. Rent was due, bills piled up, and odd jobs barely kept the lights on. "Daddy?" Emma tugged his hand. "Maybe today will be better." He forced a smile. "That's the plan, kiddo." But as he left her at the school gates, a sleek black car rolled to the curb. The window slid down. And there she was, the same woman he had pulled from under the truck. Emma's eyes went wide. "Dad, is that?" Victoria Lane leaned forward, her voice cutting through the city noise. "Mr. Harris, isn't it? Get in. We need to talk." Daniel froze. The world suddenly felt heavier. He had no idea why the CEO of Lane Global was here, but something told him this was just the beginning. The door of the black car stood open like a question. Daniel hesitated, heart pounding. Men in suits didn't pull up outside his daughter's school, not for him. Emma whispered, "Dad, are you in trouble?" He crouched, brushing her hair back. "No, baby. I'll be home tonight. Promise." He kissed her forehead, then slid into the car. The door clicked shut, and the city outside vanished. Inside, leather seats, tinted glass, silence. Victoria Lane sat across from him, every inch the powerful executive, sharp blazer, steady eyes, but her voice carried something he hadn't expected, humility. "You cost yourself something yesterday, didn't you?" she asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter. You're safe." She studied him like she was reading a contract. "Do you know who I am?" He shook his head. "I'm Victoria Lane, CEO of Lane Global." She leaned closer, her tone dropping. "And I owe you my life." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have helped." "No." Her voice cut sharp. People froze. "You moved." For a moment, the car hummed in silence. Then she slid a folder across the seat. "I had my assistant check the missed interviews yesterday. Your name was on that list." Daniel's throat closed. You know about that?" She nodded. "You were supposed to be sitting in my building. Instead, you were saving me. That's not failure, Mr. Harris. That's the kind of man I want working for me." His palms dampened against his knees. "Why me? I'm no executive." Victoria's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something human breaking through. "Because courage and integrity can't be taught. Skills can. You've already proven who you are." The car slowed in front of a tower of glass and steel. Lane Global. The doors loomed like the gates to another world. "Tomorrow morning," she said firmly. "Not for an interview, for a job." Daniel stared at the building, pulse racing. This wasn't just opportunity. It was a storm. The glass doors of Lane Global towered above Daniel like the gates of another world. He caught his reflection, wrinkled shirt, thrift store tie, shoes worn thin. He looked like a man who'd wandered onto the wrong street, not into the headquarters of one of the biggest companies in the city. But Emma's words from the night before whispered in his ear, "Being good matters more than being important." He straightened his shoulders and pushed inside. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and a chandelier that looked more expensive than his entire apartment. Executives in tailored suits glided past without so much as a glance, though a few smirked at the outsider standing awkwardly in the middle of their world. Then the silence shifted. From the grand staircase, Victoria Lane appeared. Sharp heels clicked against the marble, eyes fixed on him. Conversations faltered. Phones lowered. The CEO herself was coming down, not for the board, not for investors, but for him. "Mr. Harris," she called, her voice echoing through the lobby. Heads turned. Whispers sparked. Daniel's throat tightened. "Ms. Lane," he managed, his voice steady despite the storm inside. She stopped in front of him, meeting his eyes. "Follow me." The boardroom was glass-walled, with the city sprawling beyond it like a kingdom. Around the tables sat men and women in sleek suits, their faces sharpened by years of power and money. One executive leaned forward, lips curled. "With all due respect, Ms. Lane, who exactly is this man?" Victoria didn't hesitate. "The reason I'm alive today. And the reason this company needs a different kind of leadership." Every eye swung to Daniel. His pulse thundered. He had never been more out of place. But he knew one thing, walking away wasn't an option anymore. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne. Daniel sat stiffly at the far end of the table, the skyline stretching behind him like a reminder of how small he really was. The first voice came like a dagger. "A mess. Lane, with respect, this is absurd. He's not qualified." Another executive chimed in, smirking. "What's next? Hiring janitors to run finance?" Laughter rippled around the table. Daniel's fists curled under the polished surface. He wasn't angry for himself. He was angry because he knew Emma would hear these whispers one day, that her father wasn't enough. Victoria's voice cut through the noise. You mock him, yet none of you moved when my life was seconds from ending. He did. Still, the skepticism pressed in. Courage isn't strategy, one man snapped. We need efficiency, not heroics. All eyes swung to Daniel. The outsider. The mistake. The man with nothing but worn shoes and calloused hands. His chest tightened, but then he remembered Emma's crayon drawing on their fridge. Her dad, taller than the problems. He leaned forward. His voice was quiet, but steady. You want efficiency? I've spent years fixing things with nothing but scraps and stubbornness. I've built delivery routes on diner napkins and kept businesses alive when consultants wouldn't take their calls. I don't speak your language of quarterly margins. I speak the language of survival. And in the real world, that's strategy. The room fell silent. Executives shifted uncomfortably. One cleared his throat, but no words came. For the first time since entering Lane Global, Daniel saw it, respect, flickering like a fragile flame in their eyes. Victoria's lips curved, the faintest smile. Gentlemen. I believe we've just witnessed what leadership sounds like. The respect in the boardroom was short-lived. Within days, Daniel found himself drowning in charts, graphs, and jargon that might as well have been another language. His first assignment, streamline Lane Global's delivery system across 3 states. On paper, it was a spreadsheet of numbers. In reality, it was the difference between the company keeping contracts, or bleeding millions. Executives watched him like vultures, waiting for him to fail. One of them muttered loud enough for him to hear, "He's a charity case, not a strategist." Daniel ignored the sting. He walked the warehouse floors instead. He talked to drivers who hadn't been asked for input in years. He sat with mechanics over greasy lunches, listening to problems that no spreadsheet had captured. By the end of the week, he returned not with charts, but with a hand-drawn map of routes, scrawled on butcher paper. The executives sneered. This is amateur hour. But Victoria leaned in, her eyes sharp. Explain. Daniel pointed. Your system sends half-empty trucks across the state while others overflow. Drivers know the shortcuts. Mechanics know which rigs break down. I listen to them. This, he tapped the paper, will save you money, time, and breakdowns. The room went quiet. No one laughed this time. That night, exhausted, Daniel slumped onto the couch. Emma padded over in her pajamas, holding a sketchbook. Dad, look, she said. She'd drawn him in front of a giant building, surrounded by workers smiling. Above it, in bold letters, "My dad's a leader." Daniel's throat tightened. He whispered, "I don't know if I can do this, kiddo." Emma hugged him. "You already are." And for the first time, he almost believed it. Success painted a target on Daniel's back. Within days of his new route plan cutting costs, whispers slithered through the office halls. Some called him the hero in overalls. Others spat the word lucky. But one executive, Marcus Hale, decided luck had nothing to do with it. And he wasn't about to let an outsider steal his spotlight. The sabotage began quietly. Missing documents. Misfiled reports. Numbers altered just enough to make Daniel look careless. At the weekly meeting, Marcus pounced. A mess. Lane, these figures don't add up, Marcus said smoothly, sliding doctored spreadsheets across the table. Your new hire is already costing us. Daniel's stomach dropped. He hadn't made those errors, he knew it. But the board's skeptical eyes pinned him like insects under glass. Victoria's gaze lingered on him, unreadable. Mr. Harris? Explain. Daniel steadied his voice. I didn't make these changes. But I'll prove it. Marcus smirked, already savoring victory. That night, Daniel sat hunched over his kitchen table, papers scattered like debris. Emma rubbed her eyes, carrying her sketchbook. "Daddy? Why are you still up?" He forced a smile. "Grown-up homework, kiddo." She leaned against him, pointing to one page. "This one's wrong. See? You said trucks can't drive through that tunnel, 'cause it's too low. But here it says they do. That doesn't make sense." Daniel froze. His 10-year-old had just spotted the sabotage. His chest swelled with both relief and pride. The next morning, he strode into the boardroom, holding the corrected maps. "Here's the proof," he said firmly. "The mistake wasn't mine." The room shifted uneasily. Marcus paled. Victoria's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Noted. Next time, Marcus, be careful what shadows you step into. Some men don't scare easily." Later, alone in her office, she studied Daniel with a softness no one else saw. "You remind me of someone I used to be," she admitted quietly. For the first time, her armor cracked. And Daniel realized he wasn't just changing the company, he was changing her. The city glittered outside Victoria's penthouse office, but inside, silence pressed heavy. She sat with a glass of wine untouched, her eyes fixed on Daniel across the desk. "Do you know why I built Lane Global the way I did?" she asked suddenly. Daniel shifted, unsure if it was a trick question. "Because you're ambitious?" Her lips curved, but not in amusement. "Because I was tired of being weak. My father ran this company before me. He told me kindness was weakness. That if I wanted respect, I had to cut deeper, strike first, never let anyone see me bleed." Her voice caught, the mask slipping for a breath. "I believed him. Until you pulled me out of the street. You didn't see a CEO. You didn't see power. You just saw a person worth saving." Daniel leaned forward, steady. "That's because that's all any of us are, people. Not titles. Not bank accounts. Just people." For a moment, her eyes shone with something dangerous, for her reputation, at least. Humanity. But the spell broke with a knock at the door. Marcus Hale stepped in, face carefully neutral. "Ms. Lane, about tomorrow's investor briefing," his eyes flicked toward Daniel with contempt. "Do you really plan to present his designs?" Victoria's gaze sharpened. "Yes. And if you have a problem with that, I suggest you find another company to poison." Marcus froze, humiliated, then stalked out, the door slamming behind him. Daniel exhaled. "You just made an enemy." Victoria looked back at him. "No. We did." That night, Daniel walked Emma home from school, her backpack bouncing. She told him about her art project, her laughter echoing down the street. And for the first time, he allowed himself a fragile thought: maybe, just maybe, this path was leading somewhere brighter. But shadows were gathering. And Marcus wasn't finished yet. The morning of the investor briefing, Daniel's designs were ready. Drivers, routes, costs, weeks of sweat boiled down to one presentation. For the first time, he felt like he belonged at the table. But when the projector lit the boardroom screen, his heart dropped. The numbers were wrong. Entire sections missing. On the slides, his careful work looked sloppy, incoherent, like a fraud. Murmurs rippled across the room. "This is amateur. What a mistake." Marcus Hale leaned back in his chair, voice smooth with poison. "I warned you. Courage doesn't equal competence." Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. He wanted to shout, to accuse, but he had no proof. Not yet. Then the door opened. Emma. She clutched her sketchbook to her chest, cheeks flushed. "Dad?" she whispered, eyes darting to the room full of strangers. The executives frowned, but Victoria rose instantly. Let her speak. Emma set her sketchbook on the table, flipping to a page filled with colored lines and little trucks. He showed me this last night. The real plan. It's not messy, it works. You just changed it. Her small finger pointed straight at Marcus. The room froze. Marcus sputtered. That's absurd. She's a child. But Victoria's gaze was ice. A child who just exposed what I suspected. Hale, you're done here. Security stepped in. The same man who had tried to bury Daniel was dragged from the room. Daniel's knees nearly buckled. Emma slipped her tiny hand into his, steadying him. See, Dad? I told you. You're a leader. Whispers swelled around the table, but this time, they weren't mocking. They were in awe. Victoria turned to the investors. You wanted results? This system will revolutionize our logistics. And it was built by Daniel Harris, the man you all doubted. Applause broke out, cautious at first, then thunderous. For the first time, Daniel didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The stage lights burned hot, the investor briefing now transformed into a media event. Cameras flashed, reporters murmured, and shareholders filled the hall, hungry for answers after weeks of whispers. At the podium stood Victoria Lane, poised as ever. But this time, her words didn't cut. They carried weight. Leadership isn't about titles, she said, her gaze sweeping the crowd. It's about sacrifice. About doing what's right when no one else will. That's why I'm standing here today, alive. Because one man, who had everything to lose, chose courage over comfort. And because of him, Lane Global has a future worth believing in. She stepped aside. Daniel Harris. The applause hit like a wave, but Daniel felt his throat tighten. His hands trembled as he gripped the podium, every eye locked on him. He glanced down. Front row. Emma's face glowing, sketchbook in her lap. He began, voice cracking. I'm not, like most of you. I don't have the degrees, the suits, the polish. I'm just a dad who tries to keep the lights on. But my daughter, his eyes flicked to Emma, reminded me that being good matters more than being important. And maybe that's true for companies too. The room hushed. Then, from the front row, a clear voice rang out. That's my dad. Laughter rippled, then cheers, then thunderous applause that shook the hall. Cameras swung toward Emma, who beamed proudly, unashamed. Later, after the lights dimmed and the crowd scattered, Daniel stood on the balcony with Victoria, the city glittering beneath them. You reminded me what truly matters, she said softly. He shook his head. All I wanted was to make her proud. And as he walked home hand in hand with Emma, her laughter echoing through the September night, Daniel realized something. Sometimes the doors that slam in your face only lead you to the ones you were always meant to walk through. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.